to gather around.
This is clean. You want to
Down on all of us.
Get closer.
So we're just talking about just gonna bring it down on all of us. All everything.
Everybody ready?
I think most of you have heard this time after time.
Okay, everybody ready? Papa wants to talk to us, read us some stuff.
Thank you, Sue. Try to put down on paper 90 years is quite a big job. As I look back on all those years, I have sure wonderful memories. Life has not always been life of roses, but it's still here and I'm still doing good. I am the oldest daughter of Jim Fuller and Fern Ward. They were really great parents and I would never wish for different ones. I admired my grandparents a lot. My grandpa Fuller had a homestead on the mesa and built the old log house, which was one of the biggest homes in the area. It had 3 huge rooms, ground level, and 3 bedrooms upstairs. Grandpa owned 520 acres of land and he rented a lot more.
Maybe take that clip, yeah.
I'll just let you hold that, sweetheart.
All right.
He worked long hours, plus being the first judge of Harding County. My father, Jim, was the youngest son, and he also loved to farm and to ranch. My mother was a good horse lady. She rode very well. She could put a harness on a team as quick and as good as any man. The day my parents met while riding horses back was the starting of my life. They fell in love and got married and had 3 daughters, myself, Georgie, and Jimmy Jean. When Mom was expecting me, it was work out for her to go to be with her parents for a few days so Grandma Ward could help my mother and the new baby. I was born in Ambuda, New Mexico, March the 29th, 1929. My grandparents on each side were so delighted, and Mom said I was spoiled at a very young little age. My first home was large rooms, and it was on Grandpa Fuller's land. My parents wanted their own land, so when they found about a place about 2 miles from Grandpa Fuller's log house for the taxes, they were thrilled and happy. Grandpa and Grandma got in their old Dodge and drove to Santa Fe, to the capital, and paid for the land. I believe it totaled $320. My dad one morning saddled up and rode to Grandpa's about a mile away. Mom was busy around the house. She wore a man's shirt with a pocket, and in that pocket was my dad's straight razor in case a tramp came by, which they did often and in quite a while. A knock came on the kitchen door and my mother lifted me up and set me on top of the old ice box to sit. She opened the door when an older man asked for some food. Mom said to go sit on the wagon tongue and I will bring you some food. The old man did as she said, and Mom started working on the food on the cook stove. When she was looking to see my dad coming, she seen him and motioned him to look around the wagon. Dad came around the wagon, run right over the old guy after helping him up, and he ate and told my parents his story of how he was trying to get back to Oklahoma on a family's death. My parents moved the 2 rooms on log poles to their new land. In a year or so, they built on more rooms, making it now a 2-bedroom, living room and a kitchen. Years later, they added another bedroom. Once we had no well for several years, so we hauled our water from the canyon. Was so handy to have all the water that we wanted and needed then. We did not have electric for years. I was grown when it came through, and it cost $5, and that was all we could use. Then is when my parents bought the new refrigerator, and my Jim, hauled it down from Springer. Mom was so happy to have it after all those years. We had a radio, but it was powered off of the car battery. So that was a once in a week, we heard the Grand Ole Opry with Roy Acuff. We did not have a phone, cell phone, computer, and I never missed it, as I never had it. If I can say, I wish we would have been closer to a doctor and the hospital. The doctor was called Dr. Self, and he was in Roy. But the hospital would have been in Springer, which is about 60 miles away. The school bus came right to our door, so that was good. The old farmhouse had no bathroom. We had to clean out the side toilet. Once Georgie's, which was Georgie's job, once she was old enough to sweep it and to mop it, it was well, and she put in a catalog if it needed paper. Then we learned Georgie was spending her time taking out scissors and cutting out paper dolls from the catalog. In the spring and the summer was a busy time for us. My parents planted a big garden, and Mom canned hundreds of jars each year from our garden. After the garden was planted and growing, we set aside a couple of days each week to weed. Each one of us took a row, and we pulled every weed in the row. We would get on our knees and pull as we sung or just talked. A couple of times a week we took a picnic lunch and drove a team and wagon to what we called the Indian Caves and spent the day. We would swim and sunbathe and eat our lunch. What fun. It was at about 6 years old, I daily asked for my own horse. One day, an old Mexican man came riding in on a horse and leading another one, and stopped to talk with my dad. Through the talking, my dad asked what he would take for the old black mare. She was so poor and the hair matted everywhere. They finally agreed upon $1 bill and a 100-pound sack of corn seed for the horse. I was just thrilled. Dad told me how she was my responsibility. She would come first for me to take care of her. I was the luckiest kid in the world, I believed, and have my own horse. I took really good care of her, but one morning she did not come to the corral for the food. I looked down the pasture and I could see something at the back of the pasture. It looked like the mare was down and maybe a dog standing near her. So I was so scared. My dad ran away and we were so shocked. The mare was giving birth to a little colt.
That's a bonus.
My dad did not realize she was with Colt, as she had been so poor. We named him Joker. This little brown and white colt was mine, and I loved him at once. I rode him bareback all of his life, and he's so special. My whole heart beats just after almost 90 years ago. We had a big black dog named Curly, and he was a good dog. He was bit by Rattler several times. At 18 years old, he was ready to go where only good dogs go. Our playtime, we spent playing with mice, turtles, and the dog. We swam in the old rock tank. We did things that I would die if my kids did that today. I drew a circle. On a tea towel and put the clothesline with clothespins on the top and had Georgie hold the bottom down. And I took the 22 rifle and would try to shoot the bullseye. We had a big lake about a mile from our house, and we took a trout line and fished a couple of times in the summer. It was fun and got fish. Mom would clean and pressure it in glass jars, and she made fresh dishes later on in the year. We killed the rattlesnakes each year. We kept our eyes open for them. Every year, every summer, when summer came, we moved our old springs and mattresses on the south side of the house so we could be cool, and we'd all talk and laugh when laying on them. One day, my dad came in from the field, and after lunch, said he was tired and going to lay down and rest for a little while. He laid down, and in a few minutes, he said, "I hear something." He kept saying something. It was not right. Mom, being upset, said, "Get up and we will look." And when they pulled it back the old mattress, here was a big old rattlesnake. It was wound up in the springs, and as my dad would wiggle, it would pinch him or hurt, and that darn snake went to snake heaven. The depression was doing its thing. We were so happy we lived on a farm and had plenty to eat when lots of city people were going hungry. The evenings we'd sit around and plan what we would do once it was over. My Grandpa Fuller had harvested some good wheat crops and saved his money when one day a neighbor came by to tell him that the bank had closed. He drove there and so far it was closed. He told me years later he got back 10 cents on a dollar, and it really hurt. It was Sunday afternoon and we were leaving Grandpa Fuller's, and there looked up the road a little ways with the team and wagon when my dad said, "There's a bad storm a-coming." Mother and him talked about the huge cloud and decided we'd turn around and go back, as we would never make it clean to our house before it hit. We pulled into Grandpa's driveway, and he met us and helped us kids out of the wagon and into the house, while Dad unhitched and run the team into the corral. It then hit full blast. Grandma lit the lamp, and we could hardly see each other. The dust was so thick. She took a tea towel, wet it, and put it around each one of our mouths and noses. That would be the Dust Bowl days. Everything was covered in dust. Hours it raged on, and this was the beginning, as then the grasshoppers hit by the millions. They darkened the sky, and then they moved on to the wood hoes, shovels, and so forth, and ate the handles right out of them. They ate everything.
Jeez.
Holy crap.
As they went through and passed over. My dad planted some corn, and the earth was so dry the seeds never even sprouted until the following year. We never gave up hope, though. We'd sit around the old kitchen table and plan what we were going to do the next year. We never gave up hope that better days would come, and they always did. Us three girls were so lucky to survive the black measles. We were so sick, and my parents never laid down for a couple of days at a time. And a Singer sewing machine salesman came, and he jumped in and helped Mom. Said he was truly a good man. Kids died and on all sides of us, but us three girls were that lucky we survived. One early spring day, Grandparent Wards came by, and they were going into Oklahoma to trim trees and so forth, and asked if I would like to go with them. They planned to go by Grandma's sister, Gladys and John, which I had never seen, and then onto the road to Jay, Oklahoma to see my great-grandparents, the Laytons. I was excited to go for a couple of weeks. They would see I got home and jumped at the plan. I jumped at the plan. I had a very nice time with them. I helped them, picked up limbs, and we would enter the street fun. They had dancing in the streets, and they won first place with the double waltz. I had a great time, and the family was really wonderful. Finally, the time came for me to go home. I had enjoyed every minute, but I got home, sounded good. They put me on a bus to Tucumcari, and then I caught the mail carrier to Muscarel. I rode to the Pittman's home, which was on the road, and then got off at their house. They were so excited to see me and said they would take me home after church tomorrow if my parents did not come to church. Mrs. Pittman played the piano in church, so she asked me if I would lead the singing, and I said that I would. She said, "Oh dear, we have the nicest young man who works for the government coming to church. I want to be sure that you meet him." And I thought, oh yeah, I'd be so happy to meet that stupid, ugly jerk. What a thrill, makes me want to puke thinking about it.
Once you want to puke.
The next morning I got up early to get ready to go and help Mrs. Pittman around the house. I wanted to look neat as I had not seen the church people for a couple of weeks. I can still see the Pittmans. He always wore big overalls, and the back seam of her nylons were not up the back of her leg, but they were very good people, even though the line of her nylon was round and around the leg.
It was round and round the leg. But they were good people.
As I walked into the church, I was thinking how lucky I was to live in this area. I set my purse down on the seat, and a few people had come, and I was chatting with them. When all at once, the doors opened, and in walked the most handsome man I had ever seen. Mrs. Pittman taking my arm says, "Dorothy, I want you to meet our new person." I had lost my voice, and my heart was beating so hard, I thought it was going to jump out of my chest. "Dorothy, this is Jim," she said, and I told you about it. He walked up and shook my hand, saying it was nice to meet me. By this time, it's the first time for me to walk. It was time for me to walk to the front and lead the singing. Jim moved my purse over a little bit, said we'd chat after. I got the voice to come out, and when church was finally over, Jim walked up and asked me if I would go with him to have lunch, and we would attend a show. When it was over, he would drive me home. I agreed that would be great. I was still sure it was a dream. We drove to Roy, and I was so impressed at his manners. He opened the car door, helped me in and out. Whoa, what a good dream. As we sat and ate, we talked of our likes and loves and things. He loved horses and dogs, Western music, ranch life. Each thing we talked about, the other one would agree. Would say, "Oh my gosh, me too." I was thinking this must be the dream. But when our dinner was over, we went to see the show. It was called How Green Was My Valley. I'm not sure I seen a lot, as I kept looking to see if he was still there or had he disappeared. Driving home, he told me about his high fever in the Army hospital, and the doctor said he would never father a child. Jim could tell that worried about it. He was worried about it. He was like
17.
he loved to have a big family. I had been hurt on a bike, and the doctors also had said that I would never be able to carry a baby because of it. We both laughed and said, oh well, life goes on. And for the following months, Jim and I were together every minute. He was working or me in school. We rode the horses every evening and just enjoyed each other's company. He would laugh and say God had made our relationship in heaven. Years and years later, we still believe God had made it happen. Christmas rolled around and Jim had planned to take his parents to his grandparents in Oklahoma. Sure, I would miss him, but it would be only for a week. He left to go and was happy for him. I was happy for him. On the other hand, but sad for me. The time went by fast, but before 4 or 5 days, Jim was back. He said his grandmother said, I have loved to have you, Jim, but your heart is not here. Why don't you call it a good visit and go back to her? So he did. When I seen the black cherry coupe, Chevy coupe, coming down the road, I was thrilled. My Jim was coming back. Our neighbors was James Mabry, and he was a good friend of mine. In town, someone said I was going to marry Jim, while a few others said James Mabry. So the guys let's act like it's a gunfight for fun on Main Street. But before the actions went any further, the police came and said, if you two guys do this, I will put your butts both in jail. That ended that joke. I am so glad I was born in that time and place. I would not trade my teenage years for anything. Valentine's Day, Jim gave me put my ring on my finger. I was so happy, and we made plans to be married. Not a big deal for anyone but us. We planned to take my mother and go to Portales. We went to the Justice of the Peace, and Jim's dad paid the $5. We were married and planned to go to the movies. And his father went with us. Jim's sister and everyone was with us all day. We had a good time. This was March the 9th, a few days ago, would have been 73 years. What a wonderful years we had together. I'm so glad I was born that time. I have seen the horse and buggy times, and the flying up to Hawaii. I'm proud of my life and would not want to change anything. Maybe spend more time with my family. Jim truly was the love of my life. When I told him that we were expecting, he was beyond words. He just couldn't believe he was going to be a father. When Jim saw his son, he was the proudest dad ever. He told me how perfect and beautiful he was. That was the first of 7. Each baby, he was so proud and happy. After our first baby, who was named Jim Jr., came Betty. She was also as special and just great. Jack was born at home, and he also was beautiful. His name is Jackie Lee. This put our family with 3 children. Our whole life was wrapped around these babies. Then we had Susan Kay, Deborah Jean, Edward, and Kathy. Needless to say, they were each so special to us. How could they be anything but special and wonderful? For years, we enjoyed each one, and I truly thank God daily for the love of my life and children. I would not change my life at all, only to have wished Jim could have been here and enjoy him more with me. We were working in Nevada on a road job when our terrible news arrived. beloved son Jim Jr. had been killed in a car accident, our whole world just stopped. Turning, I felt as though my heart had tore apart. We did what we must be done, but our life would never be the same. It had changed. We spent nights hugging and crying all night. They told us not to show so much pain in front of the other children as it could affect them through the years, and the pain is still there, and I miss Jim Jr. so much. Excuse me a minute. He was such a great guy. I spent years mad at God for taking my son, as I had always done good. I thought then after years I finally did realize Jim Jr. had done his work on earth, so God had took him home. It truly was my worst nightmare. No parent should have to lose a child. It's been many a long year, but soon I shall be able to see my son again. My Jim was a great father. He worked every day, long hours, and never complained. One day we were driving down the road, and I said, I don't like that old guy, pointing to a farmhouse. And Jim never said a word for a little bit, and then he said after a few miles, but Tootle, he does feed his cows good. Jim loved Mother Nature. He would get a thermos and of hot coffee, and we would drive just for the fun of it. Our life was simple, but so wonderful. I know you older generation have heard my stories many a time through the years. Once Angie asked me to tell her about my little pony. We sat down, and I was in a hurry, so I cut a little bit here and a little bit there, but she would not let it go. She said, but Papa, this and that happened, remember? I never cut the story short again. So if I have left you with a few good memories, I shall think life is really good. I want to sign off with a few little things involving kids, grandkids, and great-grandchildren. Each one of you have added to my special memory box. We moved a lot for work. Idaho was a very low-wage place to work, and we worked in Nevada, Montana, to name just a few. Our kids married and started their own families. Jim and I are so proud of the family, and one day I shall jot down about it. I have tab after tab to write yet. When and where do I just stop? Betty was living in Nevada and was expecting our first grandchild. Early that morning, she called and told me she was in labor, and we grabbed our suitcase, packed a few items, and pulled out to Battle Mountain. As we drove, we pulled into the hospital in Winnemucca, but she had not arrived, and so we drove on. When we got to her place, she was sitting on the steps waiting for us. Our drive back to the hospital seemed to take hours. After several hours, we had our first grandson. He was just so perfect and beautiful. We were so proud of him, and then afterwards, all of the years, we are still so proud of our Dean. Dean spent a lot of time with us. He even worked in the mountains with us. As a youngster, he went with us to New Mexico to visit. We had such a nice trip, and Jim even let him drive. We stopped on Main Street, and a few minutes later, several old Mexican men stopped and hugging me. and asked which grandchild I was of Judge Fuller. Dean was shocked at them hugging on me. But I explained to him that I rode with these men years ago. They were like my grandparents. Then Sue called us from Casper, Wyoming, to say that she was in labor. Again, we put a few things in the suitcase and pulled out for Wyoming. Our little Cindy was born, and again, she was so beautiful.
You're reading faster than I can give them to you.
Jody, you're doing pretty good.
I'm trying.
Am I doing
I'm just
okay?
praying there's no wind.
You're doing good.
She was the light of our life. She is still so special. Jody was born in Germany, and once again, we were on pins and needles, wondering, and then so far always went well, and then we were waiting to see if everything went well, and it did. We had our third grandchild, so thrilled that we came home so we could be around her more. Jim and I enjoyed our little grandchildren. Then Debbie had Tony and Angie in Idaho. Kathy had Mark and Katie here. Needless to say, we were on pins and needles waiting for each of them to arrive and to be part of our gang. Through the years, each of you have made our life really special, and we did have lots of fun. We did things together like camping. We were so happy to welcome Jack and Cheryl's little one. He was named James Lee after Jim, and we were in love with him at first sight. We spent so much time on the job with Jim. He was so sweet, and he made our life better each day too. We were on the job, and I could write pages of memories we have being with him. Then we wanted to be near Ed and Anita during the birth of this little baby. Again, we packed and drove to Portland and stayed with Kathy and family, but was at the hospital when the little granddaughter was born. She was special and again so pretty. We feel our life is so good and blessed because of our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, and our great-great-grandchildren. Then Tori and Tawny, Lexi and Sam came to visit, and it was joy just to watch them. We have Irvin build a playhouse for them, and they had lots of fun in the Sugar Shack. I feel Angie's little boys and Tony's little girls never got to do much with Jim and they are all just that much younger than the other kids. Dylan can remember me and Jim a little saying he was Big Dad's little man. Nolan was named after Jim, and I'm so proud of that. Tony's little girls were not even born, but I'm so proud of them, and they are so pretty. About a year ago, I was staying a few days with Betty and Ron in McCall, and Kathy rented a house for a week on the golf course about a block from Sue and Betty's cabin. We were having a family reunion. They invited the family, and it turned out so nice. We had a great turnout, lots of fun, and so many smiles and laughter. Thank you so much again. I can add another bunch of memories to my life. Around Christmas, Kathy asked if I would like to go to Hawaii, be gone 9 days. There would be Kathy, Irvin, me, Mark, and Mark's 2 friends at the same time. It was hard for me to get around, but I love to go when I think it's going. I think of my cousin, Junior. He one time drove into Grandma Fuller's place, and Grandma said, "June, where are you going?" And he said, "I'm going to hell, Grandma." And she said, "Wait a minute until I change my dress, I'll go with you." I thank Kathy and Mark for pushing my wheelchair with me and to sight see. We drove every day looking and had such a good time. I'm so glad I went, and everyone helped me so much. I feel so lucky to be loved so much. I thank the family for your help, helping me up, down, and a cup of coffee, a drink, a water, filling my plate, taking me to the lunch, phoning me, or many things. I love to admire each of you for your love and time. Through the years, Kathy has took me on very nice vacations, a lot of extra work, but I have really enjoyed it. When you kids were young, each of you did things I think are cute and hope to share them. We plan to go to New Mexico to visit Jim's parents for a few days, and I run into Cascade to grab some last-minute things. When I got home, Jim Jr. had decided to cut his own hair. What a mess. He told me his cousins in New Mexico the style was big in Idaho, and it worked. I was in the kitchen and looking out the window, the car on the driveway rolling on the street. Running Ed was sitting in the driver's seat and had released the brake. Thank goodness it had not done any damages. The one day I dressed up and run into town, dropped the bigger kids off at the swimming pool across the street from our house. Ed and Kathy were too little to stay at the pool for lessons. Ed just jumped into the water in the deepest end. I let out a scream and jumped in. Needless to say, I just went on back home then. One day I had Deborah out of the bathtub and had her partly dressed. I had her top, her shoes, and her socks. And when I turned to get her clothes, she went out the door. I was parading down the street, little bare butt just a showing, and a car was on the horn.
How
Thank
some
goodness.
things don't change.
Thank goodness. We were driving into the mountains and Jim told Sue to get over so we could get the rest of the kids in the car. He said, "Might even see an elk," and Sue said, very sour, "I hate elk."
Hasn't changed a bit.
How some things don't change.
Kathy would dress the dog and put her in a doll buggy, and she would sing in the buggy all day for hours. Later on, when we had moved to Valley, I was in the pickup with Dean, Cindy, Jody from school, and go camping with us. We were always enjoying it. Tori, Tawny, Lexi, and Emma were also sweet, and Dad admired them so much. Today is Emma's 16th birthday. We just wonder where have all the years gone. Years down the road, after Jim had his stroke, we were sitting at the table having coffee when Alex comes in carrying little Anna, who is sobbing. Katie is in the hospital having a new baby. I took Anna and she holds on to me, but still crying. I think she got scared and Mom was not there. Katie had another little girl and I called her Minky. Through the years, she has been my buddy. In day or so, Katie comes to Kathy's and has stayed. When Jim had his stroke, she and Irvin planned to go get a bigger house, and Jim and I moved in with them. We found the house and have been there ever since. They have been so much help for me. Jim spent hours playing with Katie's little girls. They were a godsend and still are. I wish to thank everyone for your reunion in McCall and hope to someday do it again. I hope my great grandchildren will carry on some good times. Stay in touch with each other, family. With each other and family is so very and special and important. I will not write about our heart aches and losing Big Dad, Fernie, and Georgie, Jimmy. Tears always so close. I want each of you to remember only the good times. The world is so screwed up, so the best we can do is make it count every minute. Years ago, my grandfather, Ward, said, honey, the world is going to hell in a handbasket. At that time, I was young and dumb, but now I know kind of what he meant. It is a mess. Make it the best you know how. Thank you, each member, for your love, for your caring. I appreciate it. Each of you, from the oldest Betty to the youngest Scarlett. So be proud of each one. I'm so proud of each one of you, and God bless you.
That was awesome. That was awesome. You did a fantastic job.
Did you get tired of it?
Not at all. That was impressive. Good job.
Thank you, guys.
That was awesome. You caused them all to go through tissue box after tissue box over here.
A few times I didn't know if I could.
You did good. You toughed through it. I was proud of you. That was awesome.
Sorry.
You know what you did last time? So you got it right on there. Might have well, no, it's just hot.